everyone, my name's Lucy. I work for Wild, and we've been getting loads of questions recently asking us, what does it mean when you see on the dry food packaging the words freshly prepared meat? So I've got Ross with me, who is the CEO and founder of Wild, and he's done a little bit of research for you.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is a really good question, and it makes a lot of sense because when you see freshly prepared chicken, fish, beef, whatever on the packet, you'll assume it's just fresh chicken. You'll have that image in your mind of what you see in the supermarket when you see all those chicken breasts and
Like a
things like that.
really
Yeah, but actually, that's not what the ingredient is. And I think it's a really, really good topic to discuss and to raise some awareness of, just so that dog owners know what they're buying. So freshly prepared meat in dog food is it's quite a new ingredient, and it's basically used to substitute for meat meal. And one of the reasons they do that is because recently meat meal has been getting a bad rep. So meat meal basically is just the dehydrated or rendered parts of an animal. Now, the reason it's got a bad rep is that could be anything from the high quality bits of meat that have been dehydrated to the much less nutritionally dense parts. So as a way to combat that rise in awareness from dog owners, the pet food industry has come along and created a new product called freshly prepared meat. So you'll see here on this website, allaboutdogfood.com, it has a really good explanation of what is freshly prepared meat. So as I said, it's not just fresh bits of meat. It's meat that's been mechanically separated. It's been grinded, pasteurized, and then separated. So it uses centrifuging to separate the water and fat. So essentially, it's basically like a hydrated version of meat meal, and it looks a bit like slop like this. Now, I recommend if you can go and try and search for this online, look up dog food freshly prepared, name whatever meat you want. You won't find any images of it. And that's because actually it looks a bit like this picture here. It's not particularly appetizing. But just because something is or isn't appetizing doesn't mean it's good or bad. So the main issue I have with this personally, I don't actually think it's a terrible ingredient. It is a good source of protein. The issue I have is the reason that lots of pet food manufacturers use this ingredient. And it isn't that they just want to put the highest quality nutrition in your dog's food. It's because lots of dog owners these days recognize and want to have foods that have got larger percentages meat in their ingredient list. That's because that's perceived as being better quality, which is fair. So why dry food, especially kibble manufacturers, have used this is because you can't use fresh meat in the kibble manufacturing. It doesn't work in the machinery, but freshly prepared meat has slightly less moisture than fresh meat, which means you can use it. So a trick that lots of these companies do is if you use an ingredient that has a lot of moisture, so I think here it says there's about 60% moisture in freshly prepared meat.
okay.
So that means, yeah, yes. So that means all of the ingredients that are listed on the back of the kibble that you buy, if they say freshly prepared, that means 60% of that freshly prepared ingredient is actually moisture. That means it's water. So if a food wants to say they've got 50% meat, there's two ways they can go about it. They can either get dehydrated meat and put 50% of that in, and on the packaging that will say 50% meat. Or you can buy an ingredient that's mostly water, 60% water. So you could say 50% meat on the front, and when you actually read the packaging, it says 50% freshly prepared meat. But of that 50%, only 60% or 60% of that was water. So only 40% of that is actual meat. So as I say, everyone make up their own mind. It's not a bad ingredient, but you've got to really question why are these companies using this ingredient, and if it's because they just want to artificially, essentially trick dog food owners into thinking there's more meat in the product than there actually is. Well, then I'm not a huge fan of that personally. So what I would recommend you do is, yeah, get in touch with the manufacturer, ask them, are you using freshly prepared? And it's that word prepared is legally what you're supposed to put on the packaging. Are you using freshly prepared meat? And yeah, and the other thing to note is some manufacturers are a little bit naughty and they're a bit vague with their wording of this. So you're supposed to say freshly prepared, but lots of them will just say fresh chicken or fresh fish.
That's what I was
Because
going to
again,
ask you. Is that then the same thing?
no. Well, in theory, that should mean they're using fresh meat, but in kibble, it is not possible to use fresh meat. It doesn't work in the extrusion process. So,
They've just cut out the
it,
word prepared.
yes, because it's a little bit of a gray area slash. there are guidelines you're supposed to follow, labeling guidelines, but you'll find very few companies follow them to the letter. So then that's a very convenient word. Or what you might find is that on the website it just says fresh meat, and then on the packaging it might say freshly prepared, because then they want to be, mind their P's and Q's on the packaging, because that's where they could be called up. And technically they could get in trouble if someone reported them.
Yeah.
But then on the website they've got a bit more freeway to change it as and when they want, or just shorten the ingredient list. So yeah, as I say, make your own mind up, but I think it's really important that people know what this ingredient is. It's essentially a rehydrated meat meal. It's about 60% moisture, so it's a good ingredient, but it means there's a lot less meat in the finished dry product that you're buying than it says on the packet, because on the packet the weight is just as of the weight of ingredients is at the mixing stage, not in what you buy, and that's something I don't think people know.
No, I don't
The
think
one little analogy I always give is, imagine you were buying a cake, and imagine if cakes followed this same terminology or these same rules. You could say a cake is 50% milk, because at the mixing stage you've got all these dry ingredients. You've got 500 grams of flour and sugar, and then you add 500 milliliters of milk. So you could say that's 50% milk. But the cake you buy has been dehydrated, it's been put in the oven, and most of the moisture from the milk is left. So what you buy is not 50% milk, it's maybe like 5% milk, because most of it was water, it evaporated, and what you're getting is a finished product with 5% milk. Well, it's almost the exact same with foods that have freshly prepared meat in them. So yeah, it's just something to be conscious of.
yeah,
If
definitely.
if if the percentage of meat in the food is something that you value, then yeah, look out for that, and always reach out to your manufacturer and find out, or the food brand that you buy from, and check what are the ingredients they're using, and they should be transparent with you.
Hopefully so. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ross, for that insight.